welcome to this Union Budget special show. The focus of this budget has been to spend more to grow more on the health sector, on the agriculture sector and on financial sector reform, to name a few. We will tell you all about that and more in this show. I'm Manman Bhattacharya. Let's get started with the headlines. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presents the budget with major focus on health and infrastructure, renewed thrust to agriculture and to startups. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says it is the budget of Atmanirbhar Bharat with welfare of village and farmer at its heart. Massive increase of 137% for health sector in the budget. New centrally sponsored scheme with allocation of 64,000 crore rupees announced for developing capacities of healthcare centers in rural and urban centers. 35,000 crore rupees allocated for COVID-19 vaccine. Major boost to agriculture in the budget. Mandis to be strengthened with Agriculture Infrastructure Fund. Special agriculture cess to draw more funds for creating storage and processing of agri-produce. More farm loans as quota increased to 16.5 lakh crore rupees. In a big step towards housing for all, benefit of additional interest deduction of 1.5 lakh rupees on housing loans for affordable housing projects extended for another year. The benefit is over and above the already existing limit. Prime Minister's call for Atmanirbhar Bharat finds a strong echo in the budget. Eligibility for claiming tax holiday for startups extended by one more year till 31st March 2022. All restrictions lifted from one-person companies move to help startups and innovators. Important move to strengthen insurance and banking sectors. FDI limit in insurance sector raised to 74% from the present 49%. IPO for LIC to be launched. 20,000 crore rupees allocated for recapitalization of PSU banks. Significant provisions for senior citizens in the budget. No IT returns for pensioners above 75 years of age. Budget also gives a big boost to education. 100 new Sainik schools to be set up. And in international news, there's more. Army seizes power in Myanmar, detains supreme leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Army also declares emergency for 1 year. Suu Kyi asks people to oppose the move of the army. And joining us is an esteemed panel of guests. I'm pleased to introduce Kiran Majumdar-Shaw. She is CMD of Biocon joining us. Welcome, Ms. Majumdar, to the special show. Also, Mohandas Pai, Chairman, Manipal Global Education, is joining us, and Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani, President ASSOCHAM, is joining us. I'll begin with your opening remarks on the union budget, the main takeaways from it. Ms. Majumdar, what would you say? Is this the budget for healthcare? Is this a budget that spurs spending in order to spur growth, or both of the things together?
Well, it is a very growth-oriented budget based on investment and job creation. And I'm really glad that the sectors which are going to drive growth are considered to be healthcare and infrastructure. And I think in healthcare, I think there is significant increase in allocation of budgetary spend, by almost 100,000 crores, 35,000 of which is going to be used for COVID vaccines, and about 65,000 crores, which is going to be spent over 6 years, is allocated for strengthening the, primary, secondary, and tertiary care infrastructure. So all these are steps in the right direction, directionally very right, but we must make sure that we spend adequately to attain the 2.5% of GDP spend on healthcare by 2024, which is what the government is aiming to do. So I think overall it's a step in the right direction. I also believe that the public's healthcare ecosystem is going to receive a big boost. But I would also like to see the private sector being a beneficiary of this particular allocation as well.
Fair enough. Mohandas Pai, is this a budget for an Atmanirbhar Bharat? There are 6 pillars that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman laid out of the budget for 2021-2022, and she laid out a vision for Atmanirbhar Bharat. Do you think the very many proposals that are there, particularly those relating to manufacturing and infrastructure, will help India become more self-reliant going forward?
Absolutely. I think it's a great budget. Like Kiran said, transformational. Is a budget of Indians, by Indians, for Indians. And I'll explain why. You know, we have been the recipient of dumping by China. Now, this budget focuses on the 3 things that are important for India right now. One is growth. Only growth can increase the income of people, create jobs, and increase revenues for government. So it's focusing on growth. And growth comes when you invest in infrastructure. There's a 10 lakh crore investment in infrastructure, funded 5,40,000 crore from the budget and balanced by other entities, which is all public spending. It's part of the 115 lakh crore national infrastructure program, which is very, very good. And the finance minister has not spoken about reducing the fiscal deficit to the extent required. The interest rate scenario in the world is very soft. There's a lot of surplus liquidity. And she is just brought down the fiscal deficit from 9.5 to 6.8%. Even the 9.5% has a subsidy component in excess of the budget of nearly 2.5 lakh crores. Because remember, the fiscal deficit consists of the funding from the National Savings Fund, which is hitherto outside the budget. So it is brought into the budget, and 2 years worth of subsidy for fertilizer of 1,33,000 crore has been done. So we don't have to be scared of the fiscal situation for this year, 2020, primarily because the budget has been cleaned up, made much, much more transparent. And for the next year, out of 6.8% fiscal deficit, the tax collections have been seen to increase only by 14%, whereby they could increase by 15 to 16%, because the December quarter has seen higher tax increases. January has seen 1,20,000 crores of tax for GST, etc. It's a conservative budget. So focusing on growth, funded by borrowing, which is very good. Second, like Kiran said, healthcare, which is very good, because the first budget of independent India, which has recognized that people's lives and people's health are extremely important, because the state exists for making sure that people can live a healthy life, and public spending has to increase. And the third thing, importantly, like you said, is Atmanirbhar Bharat. It is incentivizing manufacturing by the PLI, is increased custom tariff for variety of goods which are being done by China to incentivize Indian manufacturing, and it also makes sure that is creating the kind of infrastructure required in terms of supply chain infrastructure for manufacturing. So I think all in all, an Atmanirbhar budget, a growth-oriented budget, and a budget for the Indian, and I think is focused on India. It is not try to say that, oh, we must open up for trade. We must open up for trade, but you can't open up for a trade like a country like China, which dumps. We've had a $400 billion trade deficit in China over the last 10 years, and that's not going to go away. So we have to tackle that, and I think we tackled that. So I think on all accounts, a very, very good budget.
Absolutely. So a thumbs up coming from both of you, Kiran Majumdar-Shaw as well as Mohandas Pai. I'll come to you now. Vineet Agarwal, President ASSOCHAM. Does the budget come up to the expectations of India Inc.? Does it meet the wish list of India Inc.? Mr. Agarwal.
It certainly does. I think one of the important factors is that the government has not raised any additional and new taxes. Now that gives a very strong signal to whether domestic or foreign investors that the government is looking at long-term stability of policies, of direction. That gives confidence to invest for the future, for the long term. And we will see that the ease of doing business that talked about in the finance minister budget, that there are a lot of areas where maximum governance is talked about. I think this will be another factor that will really drive investment by companies in India and companies from outside as well.
Ms. Cho, how do you look at the fact that 35,000 crore rupees have been allocated for COVID-19 vaccine budget estimates of 21-22? We were earlier speaking to Chief Economic Advisor, and he said that part of that money would be going in to ensure that there is infrastructure in place for the vaccination drive, and part of the money would also be going in to funding the vaccination program. So your thoughts on this? Is it something that was awaited?
I think it's extremely important because, we've really neglected and ignored our healthcare sector for a long time. And the pandemic has brought a lot of focus on investing in this sector. And I think investing in creating the right infrastructure of cold chain and, beefing up some of our vaccination centers, especially in rural India, is very vital. And I hope that this is not just a one-time spend. I think this 35,000 crores ought to be allocated in the future for, healthcare, investing in vaccinations, in life-saving medicines, and that particular area of healthcare delivery. So I hope that, and this is a very good directional trend that we are seeing, not just the vaccination amount, but even the allocation in infrastructure development needs to be increased. 10,000 crores per annum is fine, but I think we will need to really up it over the years. This year, of course, we are impacted by the pandemic, but hopefully when we see an economic turnaround, this amount will only increase.
Mr. Pai, a look at the announcements that have been made for the social sector, particularly what is being called reinvigorating human capital, which is one of the 6 pillars that were outlined by the finance minister. And she said that over 15,000 schools will be qualitatively strengthened to emerge as exemplar schools in their regions, and they will do hand-holding as well. How significant an announcement is this, and what is the kind of potential impact that this could have?
Well, India has 16 lakh schools, out of which 60% schools are government schools. So the 15,000 is a very small number. I wish she had said that she'll start a program for 100,000 government schools, state and center. It would have been much, much bigger. Because we must remember that children should not lose even a single year of school because of bad quality schools, and public schools, a large majority are not doing very well. But anyway, 15,000 is very good. I hope she gives a bigger fund allocation. And if this 15,000 become exemplar school, they will pull up the quality everywhere. But one thing I want to say, for the first time, the budget and the government policy suggests that quality is important in school education. So you are creating this 15,000 exemplar school at the top. Because once you invest in the top and the bottom together, the top will pull up the bottom. For too much of time, we're investing only in the bottom to give access and social equity, which are very important, but not for quality. Now we're investing in quality, and 15,000 number is small, but hopefully they will act as a inspiration for the other schools to come up. So I think it's a very, very significant announcement considering what we have been doing so long. It may look small considering India, but I think it's very, very significant.
Vineet Agarwal, there was an expectation over the years that there will be an asset reconstruction company in order to look at the problem of bad loans and address that for resolution of NPAs. That is, there was this long-awaited banking sector reform, and the Chief Economic Advisor had talked about this in his economic survey as well. And now we are looking at a more targeted approach perhaps at resolution of NPAs of the banking system. Will that help ease credit flow, and will that boost growth going forward?
Yes, that is one of the areas. That's clearly something that was needed to activate credit flows. But we know that there is a severe shortage of credit at several sectors, several levels, at the MSME levels as well. So a bad bank or an ARC specifically targeting at NPAs is a very, very welcome step. But overall credit flow needs to increase. The IBC process, the insolvency process, has also been put on hold till the financial year end. So there will be a lot of cases that will come up, and we know that the RBI is also estimating that the approximate NPAs is also expected to double So from that purpose, even the NCLT courts have to get geared up and get ready so that the resolution has to happen as well. Because one is that you take the loans and make them NPAs, but after that, if there are viable companies, they need to be supported as well for them to come up again. And that will be also critical. The companies that are not competitive will ultimately die. But ultimately, the support from the ARC perspective, from the IBC perspective, and ensuring that this credit flow doesn't stop will be very critical.
Okay. Ms. Shaw, coming back on the health sector, was it the need of the times to have overwhelming focus on the health sector, and does the budget meet those expectations, considering that a record amount has been allocated this time around for the health sector as a whole, and a new scheme, a centrally sponsored scheme, has also been announced in order to ensure that there are more capacities in the health sector from block level upwards?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think that was a very important, budgetary allocation. And I only hope that it keeps increasing as we are able to afford more over the coming years. Another area I also want to briefly mention is the allocation of budgetary funding for research and innovation to the public sector research ecosystem.
Yes,
But
50,000 crore rupees has been allocated
That's
for
right.
that.
National
about
Science
10,000.
Research Foundation.
Yeah, to the National Science Research Foundation. And here I just hope that they focus on industry academia research partnerships, because without that linkage, the amount you're going to spend in research will not give you the optimal impact and outcome of this kind of return on that kind of investment.
Mr. Agarwal, on the various announcements that have been made, for instance, increasing the FDI limit for the insurance sector to 74%, what is the kind of impact that this is likely to have?
I think there are several. India is an extremely unbanked and underinsured country. We need to really increase this framework of insurance, be it life or non-life, because it provides a huge amount of security for all levels, be it at the lowest strata to all levels, essentially. The health insurance scheme that the government has launched has shown, the economic survey showed the real positive impact of health insurance. So it's a very unbanked, uninsured sector, and we really need to increase this impetus. So improvement in increasing the FDI limits is a great step. It will help to bring in more capital as well and ensure that the country gets more insured.
Mohandas Bhai, on the issue of disinvestment, we are aware that a target has been set now of around 1,75,000 crore rupees for the next fiscal. There is a public sector enterprise policy also that has been announced, where there will be privatization taking place in non-strategic sectors, and except in 4 strategic sectors. In all other non-strategic sectors, we look at privatization of public sector enterprises. Is this going to ease the revenue demands really? Will this really come up with the revenue that India needs in this current situation, where the capital expenditure has it's been decided to increase the capital expenditure substantially, because when you spend more, you grow more?
Well, I hope so, because remember, this year in fiscal 20, they budgeted 2 lakh crores and saying LIC will go public. They didn't even pass a law to to allow LIC to go public. At least now, the HPCL strategic sale, the BPCL strategic sale is going on. Air India is very advanced, and Neelachal Ispat is very advanced. So I think BAML is advanced. So I think a lot of them are advanced. And the finance minister has promised that the LIC Act will be amended in this session to allow that. So I'm hopeful that next year, this 1,75,000 target will be achieved. This year, if you look at the budget, only 30,000 crore is budgeted for disinvestment proceeds from 2 lakh crore. The whole story of disinvestment has been announcement not backed by execution capacity. I think the government should look at execution capacity. It always gets delayed. Air India has been pushed time and time again. And if you look at LIC, not much work has been done till now. Hopefully the law will be changed. IDBI will go, IDBI will be sold, which has to be sold. 2 more banks will be sold. So I think the monetization, the real estate of the government is very interesting. That's been required for the last 25 years. The government and public sector have got surplus lands, and the public sector that closed, they got a lot of land, and that land should be sold or released to the market where the land prices come down. People get more land for housing, etc. So I think, this is at least a much better thing, and hopefully they will realize the money, and that will go to make sure they don't borrow too much of money. I'm much more positive and optimistic this year for 21-22 than in 20.
Vineet Agarwal, how do you look at the announcement in the budget of 20,000 crore rupees being provided for development financial institution for infrastructure financing with the aim of reaching a lending portfolio of at least 5 lakh crore rupees over 3 years?
This is something that we've been talking about from an organization perspective for several years. There is clearly a need for long-term financing. Banks the current banking system today borrows short and lends on long. That really cannot work for a long-term perspective, especially when we are going to invest so much into infrastructure. So this DFI is critical for the next phase of growth that we've been talking about for the country. And it is a very welcome step. The capitalization levels that the finance minister talked about also seems to be adequate. However, we'll have to see how things progress in the next few years, how in the next few months in terms of them getting activated and really starting this up quickly so that some of this funding can start for the infrastructure projects that is part of the national infrastructure pipeline.
Mohandas Pai, coming back to the education sector, the finance minister spoke about how a higher education commission was announced earlier, and that will be set up after a bill is introduced this year. What is the kind of transformation that we are looking at in higher education regulation with the passage of this bill going forward?
No, I think the Higher Education Commission is essential because remember, government has 3 functions in education, whether primary, school or higher education. One is the policy maker. Policy has to be made for everybody, all citizens, without discrimination between public and private. The second is as a regulator to make sure that quality is ensured and students are protected. And the third is that of a provider of education services. Right now, all 3 is run by the same body, and there's a lot of confusion in the states and center. Now, the National Higher Education Commission will demarcate all these areas because they will be responsible for ensuring regulations and for having control over the people who are providing. And hopefully they'll make sure that both the public schools, private schools, public universities, private universities are regulated in the proper manner, held to the same standard. But too often the public sector schools, the public universities, especially state universities, have been doing a very bad job. They don't have enough quality, they don't have enough faculty, they're not investing enough, and students are not getting a good education. That's why it's such low quality. And that's why having a good regulatory body which is unified. For example, today we have AICTE, you have the Medical Council, then you have the UGC, you have all kind of people, and everybody is cross purpose. They're being brought together. So there is going to be assessment, and there is going to be standardization, etc. And all this is going to come in this body. So I think it's very good. This will probably help improve education, but you must remember, it's going to take 8 to 10 years. Nothing happens in higher education, immediately. The most important thing in higher education was to give autonomy to the top 200 universities, which is being done slowly. We have the nationally important universities, which are very good, 20 of them. Next 200 are getting more and more autonomy. AICTE has given autonomy. So a lot of things have happened. But if you want to see real results, it's going to take time. But they're a very, very important step.
Now, the one common question that I want to ask all 3 of you, beginning with you, Ms. Shaw, is do you think that this budget is going to help put the economy back on track and take us eventually to the pre-COVID levels?
I just want to emphasize what Mohandas said, and that is we need to find the funding to back infrastructure because that is what is going to bring back jobs and growth. And it is extremely important to translate the intent with implementation because I think trying to raise funds from divesting or monetization or privatization is a slow process and we need to expedite it. If we don't expedite the process, then we are going to miss the bus. So I really think we need to focus on execution and implementation, and that will actually help us to, get into this V-shaped growth that we want.
Okay. And Mr. Pai?
Well, let me give you some data. The GDP in 2020 was 203 lakh crores, supposed to come down to 194 lakh crores in 2021 because of COVID. Nominal decline is 4%, real decline is 7.7%. And this year, 2021-22, the GDP will go up to 222 lakh crores. So compared to pre-COVID, this is a growth of 10-11%, which is very good. So we are going to be mostly past the pre-COVID levels in a very substantial manner. The key is, can you build up momentum right now with all that we have to reach $5 trillion by 2026? And that to me is very important. Can you build up momentum to reach $10 trillion by 2031? That is very important. And like Kiran said, for that, we must increase the execution capacity of the country. Government's execution capacity should increase. Private sector execution capacity will increase. We must set high growth levels, and we must ease business so that business and private sector can invest more, can execute well. That's why ease of doing business, cost of doing business, access to more long-term money, access to foreign capital is very important, and government is doing all that. But when government handles infrastructure, they must make sure they give the contracts on time, they don't delay, they do the project reports on time, which is happening now after a long time, and they also pay them on time. The payment to infrastructure providers has not happened as many expected. That's why many construction companies have gone sick, because government is not paying them. And like Kiran said, we have got a great future in this country. We will do extremely well, but we got to execute better. We have to be more productive, and well, we are all optimistic.
Mr. Agarwal, will this budget help put us back on track to pre-COVID levels eventually?
Yes, absolutely. We'll be much ahead of pre-COVID level 21.
I disagree with Mohandas Pai on this at all. I think he really said it exactly what I wanted to say. There is the momentum has started, and with the confidence of vaccination that we are getting right now, I think we are going to definitely start looking at post-COVID in a very, very different manner for the next few years.
So, Agarwal, also, what do you think about what this budget says in terms of tax certainty? Because we haven't seen any new tax being introduced for the corporate sector, and we are aware how corporate tax rates have been reduced in the past, and how we have reached those countries' levels where there are, some of the lowest tax rates for the corporate sector.
That's exactly what I said. I think that certainty in terms of policies in the taxation structure, etc., is what is going to drive the confidence of investors, domestic and foreign. So I think this is absolutely the right step. This is one of the areas that will attract the global value chains to India. Apart from, of course, labor, land, logistics, the reforms in those areas as well.
Now, how do you see the fact that the Agriculture, Infrastructure and Development says that will be imposed on commodities like petrol, diesel, gold, etc., will not really increase the burden of taxation on the end consumer, because there is restructuring that is taking place, which will mean that there is no increase on the as far as burden of taxation on the end consumer is concerned, and for all you know, that burden may reduce.
Yes, absolutely. I tend to agree with that.
Okay. Now, Mohandas Pai, would you, in terms of attracting investment, how would you rate this budget? Domestic as well as foreign investment.
Well, I would say it is about 8.5 out of 10, because remember, the GIFT City, certain reforms have happened. If you transfer a fund from outside to India, you will get some benefit. The sovereign wealth fund, have been sticky about certain things. That has been eased. TDS for the REITs have been done away with. The REITs will be allowed to borrow. A lot of such things have been done. So I'm very, very optimistic that is an investment-oriented budget, because the government has realized that they need to make the investment process easy. And we need to get a lot of capital. Remember, globally, capital is in surplus. Interest rates are all-time low. This is the time the government must borrow, the private sector should borrow. And for the private sector should borrow, interest rates have to be low. They are low. And the tax rate should be low so that I have internal accruals. So we got a low tax rate for corporations, which create surpluses for them to invest. We got good policy going ahead, and we're incentivizing investors to come ahead. I wish we're incentivizing our Indian investors a little bit more for startups, but it does not happen. But anyway, I think what has been done is very, very good, and incentivize investors and getting foreign capital into insurance company, because this long term is very good. All of them together will help improve the flow of capital.
Will this budget boost investment, both domestic and foreign?
Yeah.
Mr. Agarwal?
Yes, absolutely. I think we can see the reaction of the stock market today itself. It's up 5%. It is giving confidence to investors that the policies are here to stay, at least till the next election, which is at least 2 to 3 years away. Is the government will also try to build the consensus that they can attract more and more investment into the country. And the budget is a very, very welcome step in that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, Mohandas Pai and Vineet Agarwal for having joined us for this discussion on the union budget and for sharing your perspective on various aspects of the budget.
Thank you.
Yes, and the union budget announced a substantial increase in investment in health infrastructure and budget outlay for health and well-being, and that was increased by 137% of the budget estimates of this fiscal. A new scheme, Pradhan Mantri Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana, was announced for capacity building in the health sector. Here's all about the announcements with regard to the health sector in the union budget.
Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's budget proposals had a deep imprint of the impact that COVID-19 pandemic had on the nation's economy, and particularly on the public health system. Starting her budget speech with a narration of the fight against COVID-19, the Finance Minister strongly positioned health and well-being as one of the 6 crucial pillars of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Underscoring the significant importance of health and well-being for the growth and development of the country, the budget allocation for the same has been increased to 2,23,846 crore rupees in budget estimates 21-22, as against the budget estimate of 2020-2021 of 94,452 crore rupees. This manifests into a sharp increase of 137%.
The investment on health infrastructure in this budget has increased substantially. Progressively, as institutions absorb more, we shall commit more. Taking a holistic approach to health, we focus on strengthening 3 areas: preventive, curative, and well-being.
A new centrally sponsored scheme, Prime Minister Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana, will be launched with an outlay of 64,180 crore rupees over 6 years. The main interventions are setting up of integrated public health labs in all districts and 3,382 block public health units in 11 states, establishing critical care hospital blocks in 602 districts and 12 central institutions, operationalization of 17 new public health units and strengthening 33 existing public health units at points of entry, setting up of 15 health emergency operation centers and 2 mobile hospitals, setting up of a National Institution for One Health, a regional research platform for World Health Organization Southeast Asia region, 9 biosafety level 3 laboratories and 4 regional national institutes of virology.
New centrally sponsored scheme, PM Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana, will be launched with an outlay of about 64,180 crores over 6 years. This will develop capacities of primary, secondary and tertiary care health systems, strengthen existing national institutions and create new institutions to cater to detection and cure of new and emerging diseases. This will be in addition to the National Health Mission.
Development of COVID-19 vaccines also found a pride of place in the union budget.
I have provided 35,000 crores of rupees for COVID-19 vaccine in this year 21-22. I am committed to provide further funds if required.
In addition, the pneumococcal vaccine will be rolled out across the nation. The National Nursing and Midwifery Commission Bill will be introduced by the government for passing. The Union Budget has proposed merger of the Supplementary Nutrition Program and the Poshan Abhiyan. These will form the umbrella of Mission Poshan 2.0. Another noticeable thing is the phenomenal increase in the allocation for the Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation. Its annual budget allocation has been increased more than twice, from 21,518 crore rupees in budget estimates of 2020-21 to 60,030 crore rupees in the budget estimates of 2021-2022. The budget has gone into the all aspects that demanded attention and funds, and the proposals will prepare the foundation of a healthy and fit India. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
The agricultural credit target to 16.5 lakh crore rupees in financial year 2021-22. Also, the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund will be made available to APMCs for augmenting their infrastructure facilities.
In a slew of steps to support the agriculture sector, Union Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs Nirmala Sitharaman on Monday announced 9 measures for agriculture sector. Finance Minister said that the minimum support price regime has undergone a sea change to ensure price that is at least 1.5 times the cost of production across all commodities.
Our government is committed to the welfare of farmers. The MSP regime has undergone a sea change to assure price that is at least 1.5 times the cost of production across all commodities. The procurement has also continued to increase at a steady pace. This has resulted in increase in payment to farmers substantially.
Sitharaman said that there is a steady increase in the procurement of wheat, rice, pulses from farmers. Sitharaman also said that in case of wheat, the total amount paid to farmers in 2013-2014 was 33,874 crore rupees. In 2019-2020, it was 62,802 crore rupees. And even better, in 2020-2021, this amount paid to farmers was 75,060 crore rupees. For paddy, the amount paid in 2013-2014 was 63,928 crore rupees. In 2019-2020, this increased to 1,41,930 crore rupees. Even better, in 2020-2021, this is further estimated to increase to 1,72,752 crore rupees. In case of pulses, the amount paid in 2013-2014 was rupees 236 crore. In 2019-2020, it increased to rupees 8,285 crore. Now, in 2020-2021, it is at 10,530 crore rupees, a more than 40 times increase from 2013-2014. The receipts to cotton farmers have seen a stupendous increase from 90 crore rupees in 2013-2014 to 25,974 crore. The Finance Minister said that efforts are being made to further strengthen ENAM to benefit the farmers. The Finance Minister proposed to integrate 1,000 more mandis with ENAM to bring transparency and competitiveness.
Around 1.68 crore farmers are registered and 1.14 lakh crores of rupees trade value has been carried out through ENAMs, the National Agricultural Market. Keeping in view the transparency and the competitiveness that ENAM has brought into the agricultural market, 1,000 more mandis will be integrated with ENAM.
To provide adequate credit to farmers, Finance Minister enhanced the agricultural credit target to 16.5 lakh crore rupees in financial year 2022. Government will focus on ensuring increased credit flows to animal husbandry, dairy and fisheries. Finance Minister also announced the enhanced allocation to the Rural Infrastructure Development Fund from 30,000 crore rupees to 40,000 crore rupees. Sitharaman proposed to double micro-irrigation fund started with a corpus of 5,000 crore rupees under NABARD by augmenting it by another 5,000 crores. To boost value addition in agriculture and allied products and their exports, the Finance Minister proposed to increase the scope of Operation Green Scheme to be enlarged to include 22 perishable products. Scheme is presently applicable to tomatoes, onions and potatoes. Sitharaman also proposed substantial investments in the development of modern fishing harbours and fish landing centres. The finance minister said that to start with, 5 major fishing harbours will be developed as hubs of economic activity. These fishing harbours are in Kochi, Chennai, Visakhapatnam, Paradeep and Petuaghat. She also proposed to develop inland fishing harbours and fish landing centres along the banks of rivers and waterways. Sitharaman proposed to extend Swamitva scheme to all states, union territories. Swamitva scheme was launched to bring transparency in property ownership in villages. Under the scheme, a record of rights is being given to property owners in villages. The welfare of farmers has been the top priority for Modi government. The steps announced by the government in this budget for agriculture and allied sectors reflect government's commitment for inclusive development for aspirational India. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said that the budget this year has the feel of reality and confidence of development and showcases India's self-belief. He also said that it will infuse a new confidence in the world in these difficult times. In his remarks after the union budget was tabled in Lok Sabha, the Prime Minister said that the budget carries a vision of Atmanirbharta and inclusion of every citizen and section of society. PM Modi explained that the principles behind the budget include expansion of new opportunities for growth, new opportunities for the youth, giving new dimension to human resource, infrastructure development and helping new sectors grow. He said the budget will lay a strong foundation for the new decade and congratulated the countrymen for a budget for Atmanirbhar Bharat.
वर्ष 2021 का बजट असाधारण परिस्थितियों के बीच पेश किया गया है। इसमें यथार्थ का एहसास भी और विकास का विश्वास भी है। कोरोना ने दुनिया में जो प्रभाव पैदा किया, उसने पूरी मानव जाति को हिलाकर रख दिया है। इन परिस्थितियों के बीच आज का बजट भारत के आत्मविश्वास को उजागर करने वाला है।
In fact, the Prime Minister also said that the budget will enhance ease of living for the common man by simplifying procedure and rules. The budget will bring positive changes for individuals, investors, industry and infrastructure sector. Appreciating the all-round development emphasis of the budget, he said that it is focused on wealth and wellness, MSME and infrastructure. The Prime Minister noted the positive early response that the budget received within hours of its presentation. He said the government gave proper attention to its responsibility towards fiscal sustainability while increasing the size of the budget. He expressed happiness that transparency factor of the budget has been appreciated by experts.
आज के बजट में आत्मनिर्भरता का विजन भी है और हर नागरिक, हर वर्ग का समावेश भी है। नियमों और प्रक्रियाओं को सरल बनाकर आम लोगों के जीवन में ईज ऑफ लिविंग को बढ़ाने पर इस बजट में जोर दिया गया है। ये बजट इंडिविजुअल्स, इन्वेस्टर्स, इंडस्ट्री और साथ ही इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर सेक्टर में बहुत सकारात्मक बदलाव लाएगा। मैं इसके लिए देश की वित्त मंत्री निर्मला जी को और उनके साथी मंत्री अनुराग जी और उनकी टीम को बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं।
And stressing the proactive approach of the government, whether during the COVID-19 pandemic or the campaign for Atmanirbharta, the Prime Minister noted that the budget does not have an iota of reactive approach. Listen in.
भारत कोरोना की लड़ाई में रिएक्टिव होने के स्थान पर हमेशा ही प्रोएक्टिव रहा है। चाहे वो कोरोना के काल में किए गए रिफॉर्म्स हो या फिर आत्मनिर्भर भारत का संकल्प, इसी प्रोएक्टिवनेस को बढ़ाते हुए आज के बजट में भी रिएक्टिव का नामो निशान नहीं है। साथ ही हम एक्टिव पर, स्टेटस को पर भी अटके नहीं हैं और हमने इस बजट में भी प्रोएक्टिव बजट दे करके देश के सामने प्रोएक्टिव होने का संदेश दिया है।
The Prime Minister said that the budget has many provisions for the agriculture sector and increasing farmers' income. Farmers will get easy and more credit. Provisions have been made for strengthening APMC and Agriculture Infrastructure Fund.
देश में एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर को मजबूती देने के लिए, किसानों की आय बढ़ाने के लिए इस बजट में बहुत जोर दिया गया है, कई प्रावधान किए गए हैं। एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में किसानों को और आसानी से और ज्यादा ऋण मिल सकेगा। देश की मंडियों को यानी एपीएमसी को और मजबूत करने के लिए, सशक्त करने के लिए एग्रीकल्चर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड से मदद का प्रावधान किया गया है। ये सब निर्णय ये दिखाते हैं कि इस बजट के दिल में गांव है, हमारे किसान है। एमएसएमई सेक्टर को गति देने के लिए, रोजगार के अवसर बढ़ाने के लिए इस बार एमएसएमई सेक्टर का बजट भी पिछले साल की तुलना में 2 गुना से ज्यादा कर दिया गया है।
TD India talked to Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Vice Chairman, Niti Aayog, and sought the opinion on budget proposals for the financial year 21-22.
In this challenging time of COVID, government has come out with this 2021-22 budget, and what are the kind of provisions which will ensure that this whole growth trajectory that we talk about goes to the pre-corona level or maybe beyond that? We are joined by Vice Chairman Niti Aayog. Sir, first thing, this the Finance Minister had mentioned about this tax terrorism. You have also talked about this tax compliances. How do you see both of these aspects balancing, and also if we talk about those exemptions that everybody used to seek from the Finance Minister, how much longer they will have to wait in terms of getting any exemption in tax slabs?
The Finance Minister very much emphasized the improvement in tax administration and tax compliance, that the faceless tax compliance and tax administration will now be spread much more widely. It was now so far only at the appeal level, but now it will be raised to the tribunal level, and also she has set up a committee, arbitration council, where the taxpayer and the tax administrator can go to and then resolve their tax the differences well. She's also announced the fact that if the difference in tax assessment is not more than 50 lakh of rupees, then all the cases will be opened only up to 3 years back and not up to 10 years as was the case so far. She's also announced real sort of rationalization for all the NRIs who come here and suffer from lack of double tax treaty obligations. So that has also been done. But I think the most important thing is that all the senior citizens have been now exempted from filing of income tax returns as long as their incomes are from pensions and interest only. And I think this will bring a great relief to the taxpayer. The whole idea here is that the corporate taxpayer and the investor faces the least harassment, and faces no discretionary or discriminatory attitude from the tax administrator. And I think that's an ongoing effort, and it will continue further. On when the further tax liberalization will come, we are now going through very trying times, very sort of hard times in terms of our economy, in terms of our fiscal resources. The fiscal deficit has reached a new high of 9.5%. So at this point of time, I want to appeal to the taxpayers to say that, look, you have contributed so handsomely to the country's ability to grow and to and to its tax efforts. Let's wait a little more time, before, when the economy is on the higher growth trajectory and we are generating more revenues, then surely that will be the time to further reduce tax rates and bring about greater benefit, welfare to the taxpayer.
Sir, one of the other aspect of the Indian economy has been that India has been appreciated as a global platform, and that it is emerging as a bright spot for investors. Recently, we have also seen India was one of the highest ranking country which received this foreign direct investment. But most of this foreign direct investment was in the sector of information technology related or maybe merger and acquisition. What is the way forward where these FDI can also be diverted towards sectors like manufacturing and other sectors which are
Well, the
more
biggest
employment.
the biggest step that the government has taken in this particular budget is to raise the limit of FDI in the insurance sector from 49% to 74%. Now, this has been the demand for all the foreign investors, because this will bring in huge amounts of capital, because that is needed to increase the penetration level of insurance in our economy, which is at a very low 4%. So that's a very big step. At the same time, the government has taken the safeguard measures to make sure that all the profit that they make, are invested here rather than taken away, and that 50% of the directors on the board of these companies are Indians, and not all foreigners. So that's a very big step that has been taken. The other very big step that has been taken is to facilitate the tax returns and the investment for non-resident Indians. Now they can come and establish any kind of company they like. Their tax audit requirements have been reduced, so that their revenues can be up to 10 crores before they need a tax audit. And I think for the manufacturing sector, the biggest scheme that has already been launched, which was mentioned in the budget, is the production linked incentive scheme for 13 sectors, where companies who come and establish globally competitive and global scale enterprises will receive fiscal cash handouts of up to 1.97 lakh crore over the next 5 years in these 13 sectors. And already it is showing results in the mobile phone industry and in the electronics industry. And I'm sure that going forward, these 13 sectors will attract a lot of foreign direct investment.
We do hope that these initiatives attract a lot of investments, sir. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you very much, and all the best.
The Union Budget has estimated disinvestment receipts in the budget estimates of 2021-22 of 1,75,000 crore rupees. Disinvestment of BPCL, Air India, Shipping Corporation of India, Container Corporation of India, IDBI Bank, among others, will be completed in the next financial year. Other than IDBI Bank, the government proposed to take up the privatization of 2 public sector banks and 1 general insurance company in the year 21-22.
The Union Budget 2021-22 has heralded an era of pioneering reforms. Prominent among them, the disinvestment process of the central public sector enterprises and reforms in the insurance sector and the banking sector. The government has approved a policy of strategic disinvestment of public sector companies that will provide a clear roadmap for disinvestment in all non-strategic and strategic sectors. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced the policy on strategic disinvestment, where bare minimum CPSEs will be maintained and rest privatized.
The Atmanirbhar package, I had announced that we will come out with a policy of strategic disinvestment of public sector enterprises. I'm happy to inform the House that the government has the government has approved the said policy. The policy provides a clear roadmap for disinvestment in all non-strategic and strategic sectors. We have kept 4 areas that are strategic.
The 4 strategic sectors are atomic energy, space and defense, transport and telecommunications, power, petroleum, coal and other minerals, banking, insurance and financial services. In the non-strategic sector, the central public sector enterprises will be privatized, otherwise they shall be closed. A string of strategic disinvestment is planned in the financial year 2021-22. A number of transactions including BPCL, Air India, Shipping Corporation of India, Container Corporation of India, IDBI Bank, BEML, Pawan Hans, Neelanchal Ispat Nigam Limited are proposed to be completed in financial year 2021-22. Other than the IDBI Bank, a proposal of privatization of 2 public sector banks and 1 general insurance company will be taken up in the year 2021-22. The IPO of LIC would also be brought in through requisite amendments in the budget session itself. Further, to fast forward the policy, Niti Aayog has been asked to work out the next list of central public sector companies that would be taken up for strategic disinvestment. The Finance Minister informed the House that she had estimated that 1,75,000 crore rupees will be received from disinvestment in the budget estimates of 2020-21. The Finance Minister also proposed to use a special purpose vehicle in the form of a company to carry out the monetization of idle land.
Idle assets will not contribute to Atmanirbhar Bharat. The non-core assets largely consists of surplus land with government ministries and departments and public sector enterprises. Monetizing of land can either be by way of direct sale or concession or by similar means. This requires special abilities, and for this purpose, I propose to use a special purpose vehicle in the form of a company that would carry out this activity in order to ensure timely completion of closure of sick or loss-making CPSEs.
Nirmala Sitharaman announced that the government will amend the Insurance Act 1938 to increase the permissible FDI limit from 49% to 74%.
Under the new structure, the majority of directors on the board and key management persons would be resident Indians, with at least 50% of directors being independent directors and specified percentage of profits being retained as general reserve.
Also, the budget proposals had an important announcement for the public sector banks.
High level of provisioning by public sector banks of their stressed assets calls for a measure to clean up the bank books. An asset reconstruction company limited and asset management company would be set up to consolidate and take over the existing stressed debt and then manage and dispose of the assets to alternative investment funds and other potential investors for eventual value realization.
In order to consolidate the financial capacity of the public sector banks, the government has proposed further recapitalization of 20,000 crores during the fiscal 2021-22. The government aims at making use of the disinvestment proceeds to finance various social sector and developmental programs and also to infuse private capital, technology and best management practices in the central government public sector enterprises. Clearly, the proposals are bold and represent the firm resolve of the government to push for the same. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
That's it then in this edition of the Union Budget Special. Thanks for watching.